Martin Krugman's body has never been found. The wig shop owner, the loan shark, the guy who put together the greatest cash robbery in American history. $6 million taken from Lufthansa Airlines in December 1978. And within weeks, bodies started dropping, one after another. Anyone connected to the heist eliminated. But here's what everyone gets wrong. They think Morrie died because he was loud. Because he nagged Jimmy Burke about his cut. Because he couldn't shut up. That's the movie version. That's Goodfellas giving you comedy instead of crime. The truth is darker and simpler. Morrie Kessler wasn't killed for talking. He was killed because he was financially exposed. And in the world Jimmy Burke operated in, exposure wasn't just dangerous. It was fatal. This is the story of how the Lufthansa heist's mastermind became its most necessary victim. From his legitimate business front to his underworld connections. From the moment he pitched the score to the winter night he vanished forever. This is what Goodfellas got wrong about Morrie. But here's what the history books don't tell you. Morrie didn't just know about Lufthansa. He financed half the crew's gambling debts. He had paperwork. He had records. He had exposure that could unravel everything. And Jimmy Burke knew it. Let's start with who Martin Krugman actually was. Born 1919 in New York City, Morrie built himself into a businessman with a dark sideline. He owned a wig shop in Brooklyn. Legitimate operation. Paid taxes. Sold hair pieces to theater people, to women dealing with hair loss, to men trying to look younger. But that was the front. Behind the counterwork, Morrie ran a loan sharking operation that reached deep into Kennedy Airport. Workers who needed fast cash. Guys with gambling problems. People who couldn't go to banks. Morrie was their solution, at 25% interest. He wasn't a made guy. He was Jewish, so he couldn't be. But he was connected. Close to Jimmy Burke. Close enough to sit at the table. Close enough to know things. And in 1978, he knew something valuable. He knew about a vulnerability at Lufthansa Airlines. Through his loan sharking network, Morrie heard things. One of his clients, Louis Werner, worked inside Lufthansa's cargo facility at JFK. Werner had gambling debts, serious ones. Over $20,000 deep, and the interest was crushing him. He couldn't pay. He was desperate. And desperate men talk. Werner told Morrie about the cash shipments. How Lufthansa moved money from overseas. How it sat in the cargo building overnight. Millions in untraceable bills. How security was light. How it was vulnerable. Morrie saw the opportunity immediately. But he wasn't a heist guy. He was a facilitator, a connector. So he took the information to someone who could execute. James Burke. Jimmy the Gent. The Irish mob's most feared and most organized criminal operator in New York. Burke ran crews out of Robert's Lounge in Queens. Hijackings, truck robberies. He was an earner. And Morrie knew if anyone could pull off a score this big, it was Jimmy. Burke listened. He was interested. Very interested. But he needed details. Precise layouts. Security schedules. Inside help. Morrie delivered. Through Werner, he provided blueprints, guard rotations, timing windows. Everything Jimmy needed to plan. And they did plan. For months. Burke assembled a crew. Each man had a role. Each man was trusted. Each man believed they'd be rich. December 11th, 1978, 3:07 a.m. The crew hit Lufthansa Cargo Building 261. They went in fast. Ski masks, guns, out. They rounded up employees. They knew exactly where to go. Werner had told them everything. They breached the vault. Inside, they found more than expected. $6 million in cash. Another million in jewels. It took 63 minutes to load everything into a van. They were gone before police even got the call. It was the largest cash robbery in American history at that time. And it was perfect. Clean. No shots fired. No one hurt. The crew vanished into the New York night. The money disappeared. And everyone involved believed they were untouchable. Morrie believed he was owed. After all, he brought the score. Without him, there's no Lufthansa. He expected his cut, a significant cut, but Jimmy Burke had other plans. Jimmy understood something Morrie didn't fully grasp yet. This heist was too big, too public. The FBI was going to tear New York apart looking for answers, and everyone connected to it was a liability. Burke started making decisions, not about splitting money, about eliminating exposure. Within weeks, the bodies started. Everyone who touched Lufthansa money was being systematically erased. Jimmy Burke was tying up loose ends. But these weren't random killings. They were strategic eliminations. Each person killed represented a potential witness, a potential informant, a potential crack in the wall. And Morrie was on that list. Here's what made Morrie different from the others. The crew guys were criminals, street guys. They lived in cash, no records, no paper trails. When they got their cuts, they spent it or buried it. But Morrie was a businessman. He kept books. He had a loan sharking operation with files, customer names, payment schedules, addresses. And some of those customers worked at Kennedy Airport, including Louis Werner, the inside man. That paperwork was a roadmap straight to the heist. If the FBI grabbed Morrie's records, they could connect dots. Airport employees, gambling debts, Burke's crew, the whole conspiracy. Burke knew this. He knew Morrie's legitimate business was also his greatest vulnerability. That wig shop wasn't just a front. It was evidence waiting to be discovered. Every loan sharking transaction Morrie documented was potential testimony. Every client he squeezed for interest was a witness who could flip. Morrie thought his records protected him. Proof of debts. Proof of payments. Insurance against clients who didn't want to pay. But those same records made him a massive liability post-Lufthansa. Now let's talk about the money itself. Morrie expected a full share. He wanted $300,000 to $400,000. He felt he earned it. He brought the score. But Jimmy wasn't paying. Weeks passed. Morrie started asking. Then he started pushing. He'd call. He'd show up at Robert's Lounge. He'd press Jimmy in front of other guys. He wanted his cut. He wanted it now. In Goodfellas, this is played for comedy. Morrie, in his ridiculous toupee, whining about his money. "When am I getting my money, Jimmy?" Over and over, until Jimmy snaps and strangles him. It makes Morrie look like an annoying fool who got killed for being irritating. But that's not what happened. Real Morrie wasn't comic relief. He was a serious operator who understood exactly how dangerous his position was. He pushed for payment not because he was greedy or stupid, but because he knew the longer he stayed unpaid, the more expendable he became. Morrie understood mob logic. If you're owed money and they haven't paid you, that's a problem. If you're owed money and they're avoiding you, that's a threat. If you're owed money and everyone else connected to the score is turning up dead, that's a countdown. Morrie pushed for payment because getting paid meant he had value. It meant they needed him alive to deliver the money. It meant he was part of the operation, not a loose end. But Jimmy Burke didn't see it that way. To Jimmy, Morrie's demands proved exactly why he needed to die. Every time Morrie showed up asking for his cut, he reminded everyone that he existed, that he knew about Lufthansa, that he was connected. In Burke's mind, paying Morrie didn't solve the problem. It prolonged it. Morrie would take the money, sure, but he'd still have his records. He'd still be a guy the FBI could flip. He'd still be exposure, and exposure was unacceptable. There's another layer here, financial pressure. By early 1979, multiple crew members were dead. Their cuts never distributed. Burke was sitting on millions in Lufthansa cash, but he had problems. The FBI was investigating hard. Pressure was building. Paying out shares to survivors meant moving money. Spreading it around, creating more trails, more chances for someone to slip, more exposure. From Burke's perspective, every person he eliminated wasn't just removing a witness. It was eliminating a payment. He didn't have to split the money if the people expecting shares were dead. Morrie represented a significant share, $300,000 to $400,000. That's money Burke could keep by making one decision. And Morrie wasn't a made guy. He wasn't protected. He was Jewish, which meant he operated outside Mafia structure. Killing him didn't require permission from a boss. It didn't break rules. It was just business. Cold, efficient business. Now, the question everyone asks, why didn't Morrie run? He saw the bodies dropping. He knew Jimmy was cleaning house. He had to know he was in danger. So why stay? Why keep pushing for money instead of disappearing? 2 reasons. First, Morrie believed his relationship with Burke protected him. They'd known each other for years, done business together. Morrie financed gambling debts for guys in Burke's crew. He was useful. He brought the biggest score of their lives. In his mind, that bought loyalty. That bought safety. He didn't fully understand that in Jimmy Burke's world, usefulness expired the moment risk outweighed reward. Morrie thought he was an asset, but post-Lufthansa, he was a threat. Second, Morrie needed that money. His loan sharking business depended on capital. He had debts of his own. Obligations. He couldn't just walk away from $300,000. That was his survival. His future? Running meant abandoning everything he'd built. So he took the risk. He kept pushing. He believed he could collect, and then step back, get paid, and disappear into legitimate business. Retire the wig shop, move somewhere quiet. He thought he could thread that needle. He was wrong. January 6th, 1979. Martin Krugman disappeared. He left his wig shop in Brooklyn that evening, got in his car, and was never seen again. No body, no crime scene, no witnesses, just gone. His wife reported him missing. Police investigated. They found nothing. His car was discovered abandoned. No blood, no signs of struggle, just an empty vehicle. Morrie had been erased. Here's what likely happened, based on investigative reports and testimony from Henry Hill years later. Jimmy Burke ordered the hit. He used Tommy DeSimone to carry it out. Tommy, Jimmy's most reliable killer, the same guy who'd later get killed himself for murdering a made man. Tommy picked up Morrie under the pretense of finally delivering his cut. Jimmy's got your money. Let's go get it. Morrie got in the car, probably relieved, probably thinking he'd finally gotten through. Maybe he was planning what he'd do with $300,000. Maybe he was thinking about retiring, about distance, about safety. He never got there. Quick, professional. Then his body was disposed of. This is where details get murky. But the method was likely brutal and permanent. And it worked. To this day, Martin Krugman's remains have never been found. He's officially a missing person. But everyone knows he's dead. Everyone knows Jimmy Burke killed him. But knowing and proving are different things. Without a body, there's no murder. Without murder, there's no case. Morrie simply ceased to exist. Now let's address the Goodfellas portrayal. In the film, Morrie Kessler is played by Chuck Lowe. He's depicted as a bumbling, neurotic wig salesman who won't stop nagging Jimmy Conway about his money. It's comedic. He's wearing a bad toupee. He's sweating. He's annoying. And Jimmy, played by Robert De Niro, finally snaps. He strangles Morrie in a car. Tommy finishes him off. It's sudden, brutal, and framed as Jimmy losing patience with an irritating pest. The movie makes it look impulsive, like Morrie died because he was aggravating. That's not accurate. Jimmy Burke didn't kill impulsively. He killed strategically. Every Lufthansa-connected murder was planned, calculated, designed to eliminate risk. Morrie's death wasn't about annoyance. It was about operational security. Burke didn't strangle him in a moment of rage. He ordered a professional hit and had the body disappeared permanently. The movie simplifies it into character-driven drama, but the reality was cold business logic. Why does Goodfellas get it wrong? Because the film is based on Henry Hill's perspective, and Henry wasn't involved in Morrie's murder. He heard about it secondhand. He knew Morrie pushed for money. He knew Jimmy was annoyed. He knew Morrie ended up dead. But he didn't witness the actual killing. He didn't know the precise operational reasons behind the decision. So the movie fills gaps with dramatic interpretation. It turns structural elimination into personal vendetta. It makes better cinema, but it misses the truth. The truth is this. Morrie died because he was a record keeper in a world that required silence. He died because his loan sharking files connected Kennedy Airport employees to Burke's crew. He died because paying him didn't eliminate the threat he represented. He died because Jimmy Burke understood that after a heist as massive and public as Lufthansa, everyone involved was a potential witness, and witnesses had to be erased. Morrie's personality didn't kill him. His business model did. Think about what Morrie represented structurally. He was a bridge between legitimate business and organized crime, between airport workers and Burke's crew. Between documented transactions and cash operations, bridges are useful when you need to cross. But after you're across, bridges become vulnerabilities. They show where you've been. They connect points that should stay separate. Morrie was a bridge Jimmy Burke crossed to reach Lufthansa. And once the heist was done, that bridge had to be burned. This is how the mob actually operates. He knew too much. He had too much documentation. He expected payment that would require moving hot money. His value dropped to zero. His danger stayed maximum, so he was eliminated. Let's talk about the aftermath. FBI investigated Morrie's disappearance. They suspected Burke immediately. They knew about the Lufthansa connection. They knew Morrie had brought the score. They interviewed associates. They searched properties. They put pressure on potential witnesses, but nobody talked. Burke's reputation ensured silence. People knew what happened to those who cooperated with law enforcement. They'd seen the bodies, so investigators hit walls. Without physical evidence, without witnesses, without a body, the case went cold. Martin Krugman became a file, an unsolved disappearance, a footnote in the larger Lufthansa investigation. Jimmy Burke eventually went to prison, but not for Morrie, not for any of the Lufthansa murders. He got convicted for fixing college basketball games. Later, he got life for the murder of Richard Eaton, a drug dealer Burke killed in a separate incident. Burke died in prison in 1996. He never faced charges for the Lufthansa killings. Never answered for Morrie, never admitted anything. He took those secrets to his grave. Henry Hill, the witness whose testimony brought down major Mafia operations, entered witness protection in 1980. He cooperated with FBI. His testimony helped convict 50 mobsters. His story became Goodfellas, but even Henry couldn't give prosecutors what they needed for the Lufthansa murders. He wasn't directly involved. He didn't witness the killings. He couldn't provide the evidence required for prosecution. So Burke skated on the biggest score and the bloodiest cleanup of his career. Morrie's family never got closure. His body was never found. No funeral, no grave, just absence. His wig shop eventually closed. His loan-sharking clients scattered. The records that made him so dangerous were likely destroyed immediately after his murder. Everything Morrie built, everything he was, erased. That's the price of exposure in organized crime. Not just death, obliteration. Here's the bigger lesson. The Mafia doesn't kill people for being annoying. It kills people for being liabilities. Personality might make you unlikable, but it doesn't make you dead. Risk makes you dead. Exposure makes you dead. Morrie could have been the quietest, most polite, most patient guy in the world. If he still had those loan-sharking records, if he still connected Burke's crew to airport employees, if he still represented a path for FBI to follow, he'd still be dead. The method might differ, the timeline might shift, but the outcome stays the same. Jimmy Burke ran a cost-benefit analysis. Keeping Morrie alive cost $300,000 in payment, plus ongoing risk of exposure, plus potential witness testimony if arrested. Killing Morrie cost nothing, and eliminated all three problems permanently. From a purely operational standpoint, the decision was obvious. Morrie died because the math didn't work in his favor. This is what Goodfellas simplifies. The movie shows Jimmy as temperamental, violent, impulsive. He kills because he's angry, because people disrespect him, because he's a gangster, and that's what gangsters do. But real Jimmy Burke was a planner, a strategist. His violence was instrumental, not emotional. He killed to solve problems, not to express feelings. Morrie's murder wasn't a crime of passion. It was a calculated removal of operational risk. And that's scarier than the movie version, because it means Morrie couldn't talk his way out, couldn't behave differently, couldn't earn his survival through loyalty or patience or compliance. He was structurally doomed the moment Lufthansa succeeded. His usefulness had an expiration date built into the plan. Burke probably decided to kill him before the heist even happened, before Morrie ever asked for money, before any conflict emerged, just cold planning. Morrie brings the score. Crew executes. Witnesses get eliminated. Morrie's name was on that list from the beginning. That's the reality of organized crime at that level. You're not partners, you're tools, and tools get discarded when the job is done. Let's consider Morrie's perspective in those final weeks. He's watching crew members die. He's hearing about bodies. He knows Burke is cleaning house, but he still shows up asking for money. Why? Because from his position, silence is also death. If he backs off, if he stops asking, he signals he's no longer interested in his cut. That makes him even more disposable. At least while he's demanding payment, he's asserting value. He's reminding Burke that he's owed, that he matters. It's a desperate gambit, but it's the only move available. Stay visible. Stay vocal. Hope that being loud makes you harder to kill quietly. It didn't work. But Morrie didn't have better options. Running meant abandoning his business, his life, his money. Staying silent meant accepting he'd get nothing and hoping Burke forgot about him. Neither path offered safety. So he pushed. He demanded. He tried to force Burke's hand. Maybe he hoped that enough pressure would result in payment, and then he could disappear, get his cut, and vanish. Move to Florida, change his name, start over. But Burke never intended to pay, and Morrie never got the chance to run. January 6th, 1979. The day Morrie disappeared. Think about that drive. Tommy picking him up. Morrie probably felt relief. Finally getting paid. Finally ending the stress. Maybe he was talking about what he'd do with the money. Maybe he thanked Tommy. Maybe he felt safe because Tommy was Jimmy's guy. And if Jimmy sent Tommy with money, that meant things were okay. That meant he was still part of the crew. That meant he'd survived the purge. And then, at some point during that drive, Morrie realized he was wrong. Maybe he saw the route changing. Maybe he noticed they weren't going where they said. Maybe he saw Tommy's expression shift. That moment of realization, the last seconds of understanding. Knowing you've been played. Knowing you're about to die. And there's nothing you can do. You're in a car with a killer. You're already at the location. It's already over. You just haven't stopped breathing yet. That's how it ended for Morrie Krugman. Not with comedy, not with nagging Jimmy one too many times, not with being strangled for being annoying, but with a calculated execution designed to permanently eliminate a structural vulnerability. He died because he kept records, because he connected dangerous dots, because in Jimmy Burke's operational assessment, Morrie's death was cheaper and safer than his survival. The Mafia doesn't kill personalities. It kills liabilities. Morrie wasn't murdered for talking. He was murdered for knowing. And in the aftermath of the largest cash robbery in American history, knowing too much was a death sentence. That's the real story. That's what Goodfellas got wrong.